Hey, Bright Lights, welcome back to part two of the Architect at Architecting Deluxe series of episodes. I have with me Caitlin Brady, who is an architect and podcaster. She started the Architect at podcast, which is a really incredible show that profiles the careers of women architects. Welcome, Caitlin.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Angela.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm glad we cooked up this idea, and we will be visiting our cliffhanger of codependency in the AEC community. But before we do that, I'm going to keep everybody in suspense a little bit longer by having you share your own career journey. How did you go from Caitlin the person to Caitlin the architect to podcaster?
Yes, so I think all of that has probably been inside of me this whole time, but I can start at the beginning. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia, which is on the east side. And I was interested in arts growing up. I had Barbies, Polly Pockets, an American Girl doll, the whole thing, but I was always more interested in building homes for them or building spaces for them rather than I don't think I ever changed my Barbie's clothes. It was just the Barbie came in those clothes and that was their outfit. Why would I change that? I wanted to wallpaper a cardboard box and add all sorts of little trinkets. So I've always been more spatially minded. And so growing my passion with a lot of trading spaces and HGTV over the years, by the time I got to high school, I had kind of thought about other careers, but ended up doing a summer camp at Drexel, which was a discovering architecture camp. I went for 2 weeks. I had a blast. I decided to apply. I applied to 8 architecture schools all up and down the East Coast and got into some really great ones, but and not, I guess I shouldn't say but got into some really great schools, masters, bachelors, but it was the program at Drexel, which ended up, I didn't want to stay close to home. I wanted to go further away, but Drexel had the best program, in my opinion, for preparing students for the workforce. So, what is that program? It's a 2+4 Bachelor of Architecture. So, yes, I was in school for 6 years and I only got a bachelor's, but I got a lot of really great work experience. So, I had 2 years of regular school, like I was a full time student. And then 4 years, I worked full time during the day and I took anywhere from 1 to 3 night classes a week. And I did that year round. So, for 4 years, I did that. I graduated. I had all of my at the time, it was intern development program, IDP
Yep.
hours. Now it's AXP, but I started taking my exams. And then within a year, I got my license. So during school, I was involved in the AIAS, which was a really great way to get some free pizza. They'd lure us out of studio with free pizza, but I stayed for the great camaraderie and events, and just it was a lot of friendship outside of my studio class with all of the people of all the years in the program. And that's actually how I got my first job. So I worked at a big international firm, a lot of projects abroad. That was my first job. I ended up switching. I think I was probably like 2, 3 years into that to a smaller firm where we did education, K-12 education, exhibit design, graphics, some play structures. We did a hot dog launcher at one point. So smaller projects, more local, a lot like funkier ones. And then by the time I finished working there, I had just gotten my license. It was a year after graduating. And I decided I've had fun in Philadelphia, but I want to try something else. So I moved to San Francisco. And that was a whole process of doing research of what city did I want to move to? Where are their job opportunities? What are firms that are hiring? Because I was not going to move to one of the most expensive cities in the country and then get laid off a month later and then have to pay for rent and do all of those things. So did a ton of research, made my move, found an amazing firm. I was very happy there. I worked there for, I don't know, what was it? Almost like 4 years, actually, I was out there. And then the pandemic had hit and things changed. And I ended up wanting to come back closer to family on the East Coast. So this is the long story of things, but I probably could make it longer. So I'll get it wrapping. But did a year on my way back to the East Coast, did a year of the digital nomad thing. I started at my firm in DC as a remote employee. So while things were kind of still fully remote or fully hybrid, I spent a month living in different cities across the US. So tried out a bunch of different ones and then settled in DC, close to family, but still felt new and fresh. So I've been working at my firm here. We do mostly higher education projects. And along that digital nomad year, I started the podcast. So I can explain more about that, but I'll stop at that point. That's a good career and education summary.
Yeah, so I think what's always interesting is why people make the decisions that they make, because a lot of times people change jobs because they think the grass will be greener. Did you have that as your motivation, or were you more deliberate and saying, I want to shape my career, so I'm going to go to a particular firm where I think I'm going to get the mentoring or the opportunities I'm looking for?
I think a little bit of both, depending on the different career shifts. So, my first job, it was someone a few years older than me in AIAS. She said, "Hey, you are very active. I was very active. We've got to know each other. We have an opening. You should come join." And at that point, I had just been, putting my very first resume together. I had like babysitting experience or restaurant experience on there. I had no idea what I was doing, so I was so thankful for a foot in the door, and it ended up being a lovely opportunity. But most of my projects were not in the local area. And they were in the Middle East, in an area that they probably wouldn't be sending me as a young single female intern over there to do any CA. And that was something that I was missing in terms of my experience, is getting that CA experience. So I started thinking about local firms, and I ended up planning it was a napkin sketch auction through AIAS at Drexel. But I also said, hey, wouldn't it be great if all these people are coming to bid on the napkins? And I was I think I was the event planning team that year. So we said, why don't we ask people to come and they can just put up their portfolio or a plot or something like that. And a firm owner came. He was scouting for someone at my experience level. And so he saw my work and was like, I want to talk to you. I got a tap on the shoulder of like, Caitlin, someone's standing at your work and like he wants to talk to you. So I went over and I went, oh, like, sorry, I'm running the event. I didn't expect that someone would like my stuff. And I ended up getting a job offer. So that was at the beginning of the summer. I ended up going to Rome. I lived in Rome for 6 weeks because my school didn't really do a study abroad program that was any specific, like a longer period of time. So that was something I applied for outside on my own and did it through the American Academy in Rome, their classical summer school.
Oh, yeah.
So it was incredible to just be there with all of the scholars all summer. And I saw a lot of amazing things. I'm so thankful that I did that. But I think I had met him. I did the summer program. I came back. I finished the rest of the interviews and then put in my 2 weeks. And I was kind of like, I'm so sorry that I was just out. I took the time unpaid, but came back and then ended up leaving probably a month later. And then I worked there. So I think getting different experience was the reason for that. And then the reason I ended up leaving that firm was because I wanted to kind of adventure in a different city. And really, that may have been some of the grass is greener, but it was more of I want to push myself out of my comfort zone. I've grew up in Philly. I've always been here. It's been the same group of people, the same city culture, the same type of city. And I thought San Francisco was different enough in terms of geography and climate and East Coast versus West Coast, all of that. And I just wanted to try something new. So it was definitely new. It did not disappoint. San Francisco is one of the most stunning cities in the world. And I will always it's one of those cities that loves you back. So I think there's a quote, I forget who said it, but I think it was something like every man can love two cities, San Francisco and his own. And I agree by that.
That's a good one, especially coming from Philadelphia. That's a pretty hardcore city.
Yes, Philly doesn't quite love you back, even though I think Philly is very lovable, but it's a little bit rougher in terms of just the experience there versus San Francisco is just so dreamy.
So, what I love about your story is, you're saying, I thought it'd be fun to be abroad. So, I did that. I thought
Mhm.
it'd be fun to have a new adventure in a cool city that was different from where I'd been. So I did that. And, I was planning this event and I got an opportunity out of it. And it's really easy to hear the story and be like, well, she's just really lucky. Look at how all that happened. But I would argue that it's not luck, that it came out of your being willing to be open to opportunities, but also being clear about what opportunities you want.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, there's many events that I went to where I did not get job offers, where it was awkward, or I felt, I don't know, trapped in a conversation where I was there too late, or I was too hungry, or something like that. But yeah, I mean, looking back, it's easy to kind of find those milestones and piece it together. But I think in the moment, you never know what is going to be something that really changes the trajectory of where you head next. So, especially with the podcast, I always try to approach things with curiosity of it doesn't hurt to ask a question and see where that leads. And some people are welcoming to that. They want to chat with you. They want to be helpful. Other people could care less. And then there's a even larger group of people that are very busy and want to help, but maybe just don't have the capacity. So you have to maybe it's all about timing. You have to time it to get the helpful person at the right time when they have capacity to do that. And then that's the same with opportunities too.
Yeah, I've heard every no is really a not yet. So
Mhm.
if you keep pursuing the thing you want, you're going to find a way to make it work. You're going to find a way in. And I know you are great at connecting with people, and you talked about how that interest in seeking people out and hearing their stories ultimately led to you wanting to start a podcast and specifically tell the stories of women. So, why did you want that format? What was important about that to you?
Yeah. So as a woman, I'm a little bit biased in terms of the content of the podcast, but I lucked out throughout my career with some really, really fantastic, talented, kick butt type of ladies who showed me that, like, very early in my career, they showed me that there is no limit to what I could accomplish. There is no restriction in terms of being a woman. And I looked at them of like, they're equally as successful as the other men in the firm. And that was my very early career experience. Since that time, I have encountered other situations where maybe their folks aren't as encouraging to women, or maybe there's a little bit of discrimination, both in architecture firms or even like the consultants or clients that we work with, where I have a younger face, which I'm sure I will be thankful for in the future. But I also feel like probably one of my biggest insecurities is I'm not old enough, or I'm not perceived as old enough. I have to prove myself that I'm old enough. I have 12 years of experience working full time in the industry, but they look at me and they go, "Oh, young girl doesn't know what she's talking about." And I go, "Well, let me start to manage this project and you'll understand that I do know what I'm talking about." But it's those things are challenging. And when you face them alone, it can be overwhelming and it can be very discouraging. And I think people leave the industry because of that, or they give up on their dreams because of that. And I don't want to see that. I want to see more women succeed. I want to see men succeed as well. I want to see non binary people succeed. But I do think that showing stories of women succeeding, not just in the architecture school to architect to leading architecture firm, I think that's one path. I want to show that. But I also want to show architect who's working on the client side of things, or who's specializing in PR or business development or coaching or engineering of some type. I think those stories are all important to show that women have a place in the industry. So when I was traveling, I onboarded at my firm as a remote employee. And so I was working with my little project team, and I said, I feel like I'm wasting resources. I have over 200 people at the firm. I want to draw from their experience and get to know them. So I started doing 30-minute coffee chats of just, I don't even drink coffee, but I was like, hey, like, I'll be drinking water, hop on. I just want to get to know you, what your expertise is, and your story, basically. Excuse me. And people were really interested to participate, and they were happy that I was asking about them. And I learned a lot that helped me do my job a lot better. Of, oh, so and so is really great at interior design. And if you need a rep, just reach out to them because they have all the contacts. Or this person's really great at Revit, and this person's always willing to help with technical details. And you learn these things by asking questions and hearing people's stories. And I think you work with people a lot better when you know more about them personally. I'm not saying go super deep in, go an appropriate level, but no more than that, like more than just the, hi, we're on a Zoom call, we're talking about the project, see you later.
So
I
how
think that's
did
important.
you kind of get yourself in the headspace to do that? Because a lot of people would be intimidated to reach out to a leader, or if they didn't hear back right away, would take that as their sign from the universe that no, 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 never do that again. So what did you do to overcome that and get comfortable asking people some of these maybe uncomfortable questions?
Well, I would blame others. I would hop on a call with someone. I go, okay, who should I talk to next? And they'd give me A, B, C, D. I go, okay, great. So I'd reach out to A, B, C, D, and I went, hey, so and so told me to reach out to you. So then it's like, okay, it's on them. Like they gave me your number to reach out to you. So that's how I kind of snowballed and, oh, you should talk to this person, that person. And I was able to, I think I did probably like 60 or 70 of these. And then folks started, folks leave or turn around or kind of do things over time, retire. So as I kept chipping away, more people or people joined the firm too. And I felt like the percentage of the interviews got a little bit overwhelming in terms of me getting through the whole firm. So yeah, I think I did probably close to 70. And then I transitioned over to the podcast. So yeah, if folks don't reach out, then like they're busy. I'm a random person and they're sliding into their DMs in LinkedIn very often, or I'm reaching out to even people that I know. It's like if they don't get back to me, then I know that they're busy. And when the time is right, it will either make it happen, or if not, then it wasn't meant to be.
That's a fantastic view to have on things because so often we get in our own way more than anyone else, right?
Mhm.
Because if you don't ask, the answer's already no. You have to
Exactly.
ask.
Exactly. Yes, might as well just try. I mean, I think the like fear of regret of not doing things, and I've definitely felt that in the past where I wanted to do something, but I felt like I didn't have permission to do it, or I was waiting for like a friend to join me to do something. And I really felt that loss of like I really wanted to do that, but I let something else get in my way. So I would rather try and fail and have it be miserable than to live with the like, oh, I never tried that, or I never did that, or I never went to that place. I want to do those things, so I might as well try. And then
Right.
if it stinks, I don't have to keep doing it. It's okay. I think it's like something that I've tried to implement recently is like if I'm reading it and I'm really not jiving with it, I'll close it and then I will not read it. And it's very hard for me to do a do not finish on a book. But I'm trying to give myself permission of like, there's no sense in really pushing through this if I can't get through it. So stuff like that, try it. And if it's not for you, it's also very okay to say this is not the right time for this.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times it's that giving yourself permission, breaking down beliefs. Like so many things we just automatically think have to be a certain way, like finishing a book.
Yeah.
You gotta kind of say to yourself, is that really true? And when you question it, you find a lot of the things you believe that are holding you back.
Hmm.
Where'd that really come from? Who told you that? Is that true? Do you have to do it that way?
Hmm. That's very true. Yeah. So question for you. How do you kind of source where those doubts come from? When you feel like that external pressure coming in, how do you identify, oh, this isn't internal, it's external?
I think it comes from, do I feel afraid? Which
Mm-hmm.
most doubt or anything else comes down to fear. And fear is usually that you don't feel safe. So you're worried about what someone will think about you. You're worried about screwing up and being judged. you have had maybe an experience with a teacher when you were in elementary school that traumatized you, and you
Mhm.
don't want to ever have anything that could closely resemble that situation. But the truth is, other people are focusing on them, not you.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
they don't care nearly as much as you think they care. And if you don't put yourself out there, you don't get anywhere. So you have to want it enough that you'll do it no matter what. Like if, let's say, your closest family member needed some kind of emergency surgery that wouldn't be paid by insurance, would you go start a GoFundMe and shamelessly beg people to donate to it? Absolutely. You would
Yes.
not worry because the cause would be worth more. So I always tell people, get the clarity about what you want to do, and then it's about the issue. It's not about you.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a great way to think about it.
But I think the great thing about what you're doing on the podcast by telling stories is that you're showing people what's possible, because we reach for the highest branch we can see.
Mhm.
We look for people whose experiences match our own, and what they're able to do then tells us we can do it too. But I know you focus a lot on mentorship and advocacy for women in the profession.
Mhm.
But I wanted to talk a little bit more about leadership in particular, because a lot of people confuse leadership with mentorship or coaching or management, but it's really not. So give me your take on leadership and how we should be showing up as women leaders.
Ooh, yes. I think that it was interesting to hear you say leadership versus what was it? Leadership, coaching, mentorship,
Or
and
manager.
and management. Yeah, all different. So I'll try to provide a definition of leadership, not focusing on those other items. I think leadership is really, I'm going to speak slowly on this one so I don't just spit it out. But I think leadership is really about knowing what needs to get done and then empowering your team, however big or small or internal or external, to work at their highest levels to get that done. Where I think mentorship is more of the guidance and the encouragement and the questioning of like helping someone pull something out of themselves that maybe they didn't know was there. I think management seems more of like a task orientation, not really people focused, but more of like task accomplishment. And then what was it was leadership management, mentorship, and there was one more, I think.
Coaching.
Oh, coaching. Okay. So I haven't done a ton of coaching, but I think also that might be more on the like a professional flair of mentorship. So because I think mentorship too could be both ways. Whereby asking the questions to someone or asking like challenging them, they are actually learning a lot too. And probably the same with coaching as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, probably the same with all of these. But yeah, I think, yeah, leadership, at least to circle back to your first question, is more of just like knowing what has to get done and getting the team there, but having expressing the guidance and encouragement to have them work at their best levels to get there.
Now, that is really well said, because I really do feel that we often conflate these four roles.
Mhm.
And in doing that, we end up as leaders taking on too much and making ourselves responsible for other people's success, which we can't be. All we can do is hold a big vision and be willing to give people opportunities, and then they have to do the work.
Yes. And I think as I've been in more and more leadership positions, I'm a project architect now, I've been doing more project management. You do find that not everyone wants what you want. So maybe in the beginning, I delegated as I would like to be delegated to myself. And so that doesn't always work with people. So as a leader, I always try to check in of how do you best work? What are the best ways that I can contact you? For example, like to Zoom bomb someone out of the blue might be
Yeah.
very offensive and unnerving to some people, but others it's like, no, that's like the tap on the shoulder in a remote environment. Like, please just do that. So you have to kind of figure out how to add calendar invites to people's calendars. Do you need to check with them first? Do you put it on? How do you give feedback? How do you set people up so that they can make and manage deadlines? If they're always kind of a running late type of person, maybe you're like, okay, like we're going to check in the day before so that anything that comes up unexpectedly, then we have another day to work on that. So it's really being a leader isn't really about what works for you. It's about what works for everyone else. And then you have to mold and adapt yourself to make sure folks are doing the best that they can. I think that's both you mentioned like as women leaders, we're very empathetic. We are in touch with our emotions. We pick up on the emotions of others. I think those are great skills that we can put to use as leaders, but I encourage men to also, and non-binary folks to also lead in these ways as well. And they have the skills to do it too.
Yeah. And I feel that leadership is really the key if we are ever going to reform what is a very broken model of practice. So I've observed what I have now called systemic codependency in the whole
Mm.
AEC industry. And where does that term come from? It is a psychiatric term. You can look up codependency, and what you will find will shock you because you'll say, well, that's just how I was raised as an architect. Because it is about perfectionism, it is about overperforming, it is about competitiveness, it is about being afraid to make a mistake. It is about devaluing yourself and people pleasing. So, if we really want to be leaders, we have to recognize this issue and we also have to deliberately run our projects and position ourselves in the world in a different way. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I know you have been collecting a lot of stories as well as having a lot of your own. How do we get out of this?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think some people thrive in the environment that has been set up in architecture. And I think that's really good for them because it's challenging. But if we want the profession to be more inclusive, and if we want more people of different backgrounds and different expectations outside of work, or if they have obligations outside of work to be able to thrive in architecture, I think we have to change how things work. And I've talked to a lot of different firm leaders who have started their own firms. You see a lot of women are founders because they go, I worked in this system, it didn't work for me. I had kids, or I faced discrimination or doubt or different things like that. So they start their own firm. That's kind of like the easiest way, right? If you if you build it, they will come. If you aren't seeing it in practice, start your own practice. But I think the little ways that I'm rebelling against the system in ways that I can as a project manager, project architect, is I'm making sure that I am trying to be realistic on proposals and realistic with time expectations. I don't want my teams working late into the night. I want them to leave at whatever, 6 o'clock, and I want them to not think about work. I don't want them to get any messages from me. So I try to set the policy of I'm emailing during business hours. I'm sending Zoom messages during business hours. If I am working on like a freak late night, I will say, do not respond to this message now. I just need to send it to get it out, or I'll try to time it so that it comes the next day. But I think the first thing I can do is respect my team's boundaries because I would want people to respect mine. So I'm going to start, implementing the change I want to see, but also just setting expectations for projects. We do design, which could go forever because we could always keep iterating. And it's exciting to do that, but that's not good for our mental health and it's not good for the business practice either. So I always try to implement realistic deadlines and try to hold people to like, what kind of work can we get done in this amount of time frame? Is that aligned with our clients' expectations? And if it's not, then we have a problem. So we really need to make sure that what we can do, we're promising it to the client. I also hold like deadlines very dear to my heart where I never want to email a client and I haven't and said, "Oh, we can't make this deadline. We have to push it." That might be like a VEF effort or something like that has come up. But like if I say I'm going to get the PDF to you on this date, I'm getting the PDF to you on that date because I've planned. I'm a pre-panicker. I like to panic early in the process and then coast through the deadline rather than being an all-night person, which I only pulled one all-nighter in college. And otherwise, it just there was no benefit to it for me. So I would always have to do, pencils down at some point and then come back to it, even if I woke up at, I went to bed at 4 and I woke up at 7. So I would get a little bit of sleep, but at least I was in my bed for those couple hours and then just keep working. So I think changing practice really starts with individuals and how then when we get into leadership positions, how is that trickling down to our teams? And if those people only know a healthy practice, then they won't tolerate that on other project teams or at other firms. They'll go, "Oh, you're making me work, 80 hours and I am eating all my meals here and I'm sleeping here and da da da." It's like, "Oh, that wasn't like my other firm." I want them to know that they can leave and also do like amazing design work for amazing clients, but also respect out of work things. So I always fill my after work life with a lot of hobbies. And that makes me happy. I don't want to be working all the time. I love the work I do, but I also love that I get to go play volleyball after work, or I do a lot of improv, or I podcast. And those things are important to me too. So I have to make space for them.
Absolutely. Like there's a term, the adjacent possible. And honestly, the more well-rounded you are, the more you start to see solutions in other things, and those solutions are more innovative.
Mhm.
And a broken practice model that is rooted in fear is exhausting. It's
Yeah.
depleting. And when we are stressed out, we are taking away our creative ability, which is what we most need as architects. So
Hmm.
it's a zero-sum game. And then we look at our profession and we want to point fingers at CMs and developers and owners, management groups when it's like, we did this to ourselves.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you get the inkling of when you're partnering with a team, if they are going to be that kind of overly demanding or unrealistic demands. And I think it's great for leadership to advocate of, oh, maybe we don't want to pursue this project, or maybe we don't want to work with this XYZ team again because it wasn't a pleasant experience to work with, or maybe it wasn't, mentally, financially beneficial for anyone. So you have to once you work with teams like that, you get a feel for it and you go, okay, I'd rather work with a team where like when I can work with an engineer and I can just call them and then we're like just chatting and having a great time. And then it's like, oh, wait, let's talk about that RFI that came up. That's the kind of team I want to work with. And I want to trust my engineers and have a good relationship with them. Other, construction teams too, if we're open and friendly, then the work is so much easier, so much more enjoyable rather than everyone having steam come out their ears because everyone's just upset and overworked.
Absolutely. And when you've got that collaboration, it also creates a lot of psychological safety, which means people are more willing to say that crazy idea that just might work.
Yes, I totally agree. And you want to empower younger or more junior people at the office to speak up too. So when you can, hey, can you give this presentation? Or hey, can you speak on this? And this was your design option or whatever. I think it's really important to make sure to shine the light on folks whenever you can and give them credit and give them opportunities to get that face time. Because I've seen with some of my research is this kind of like protege system that architecture might have, where it's this architect sees himself in a young protege and brings him to meetings and then gets this young man gets interface with the clients and next thing you know they're calling him and bringing in project work and he's bringing in project work so he gets elevated to principal and this and that and all because that one former leader saw himself in someone. And I think like sees like very often, so it's really important to shine lights and give opportunities to people that maybe aren't your mini me, because they have a lot of great talent too. Even if you don't see yourself in them, they, I think, bring a lot to the profession. So always keep that in mind too. And I just always try to shine lights on people wherever I can. And it's like, I recognize this in you. Like, you should step up for this opportunity. And not, I think some people wait for someone to shine a light on them. So definitely don't wait. But once you get into more of like a leadership role, always try to shine a light on people whenever you can.
I mean, there's just certain career milestones you wouldn't be so presumptuous as to go for without somebody giving you that tap on the shoulder and saying, you're ready for this.
Which I think happens for a lot of people, but I think it might not happen for others too. Like if they don't voice their opinion on what they want and they don't tell people about it, then no one will know. So it's really important. I've spoken with some people on the podcast where they are like, "Oh, I should have started 10 years prior of like I want to work towards this role and talk about it and work towards it." But if you get to the point where you're ready for that advancement, but that's the first time you mention it, then it's brand new in everyone's mind. Whereas you have to lay that seed early and then keep working towards it. And this was a woman that was working towards principal promotion, but she was kind of passed over because she just never voiced that desire to be in that role. And so she's like, I wish I started earlier. So that really spoke to me of like, okay, one, identify what you want to do, and then two, tell everyone about it.
Well, and that is part of the beauty of what you're doing with your podcast by having people share their stories is it is letting a lot of light bulbs go off for other people that,
Yes.
oh, am I doing that too? I don't want to make that same mistake. And, like we were saying before, we think that everybody thinks about us as much as we think about us, and they really don't. And making promotion decisions is hard. And if somebody has been very clear about wanting it, they've asked what's required, they've demonstrated and brought in their receipts to show how they are meeting those expectations, that's an easy yes.
Yes.
If you're waiting for somebody to discover you and be your
Hmm.
fairy godmother, that's going to be a lot longer of a wait.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Yeah, you have to voice what you want.
So I really appreciate how you have been that example in the way your career has unfolded, but also the podcast. I think that we can't emphasize enough how much we need to have good examples. And good examples doesn't mean that we don't hear about failure and pain and setbacks. It just means that we can see that there's a path forward. There's a way to do it, even if in our present situation, maybe we feel hopeless or discouraged. So, how do you decide who should be a guest and what topics you want to cover?
Oh my gosh, this is very personal because as much as I've thought about structuring, oh, we'll do like a green month around Earth Day and we'll do mothers around Mother's Day or, all of the AAPI or Black History Month. I could do something thematic. But it really comes down to there are just so many people that I find interesting and I've reached out to, and then it's like, okay, well, it's recorded, so I'll release it at this date. And as the podcast has gained more traction, a lot more people have reached out to me as well. So that has opened up even more opportunities of people across the country who I probably would have never crossed paths with. I'm able to interview them. So some of the recent ones we've had this fall, I really was interested in doing something about Asheville, which was experienced the flooding last year. And just out of the blue, an architect from Asheville reached out and was like, "Hey, I'm interested in the podcast." So I went, "Oh my gosh, like you must have read my little post-it that I have on my screen here where I look at it every day of just the people that I was hoping, content I'd like to talk about." So that was when that happened this fall. Um, Another dream interview was Denise Scott Brown, who
Mhm.
is as a Philadelphian local hero. There's so many works by Venturi Scott Brown in the region, and we talked about them so much in college. And so I reached out to her team, and I don't know, but the spirit must have moved her, and she was interested to talk. And we talked for probably, I think it was 3 hours. I had to divide the episode into two.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that was such an honor. I almost could cry just thinking about how much of like a big deal that was. And I did cry right after. I remember I called some like friends and family and was like, holy cow, like that was amazing. I can't believe I got to talk to her for that long. So that was a dream episode. I interviewed a lot of people that were mentors to me. So the founders of 15, those were women that I worked with at my first job. A lab planner was someone I had worked with. I interviewed previous principals. I have a current coworker on. So just people I find are so interesting, and also folks that are doing interesting work, like the NAFA, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Fat People or Fat Acceptance. And that was a something where I had gone to a meeting and I realized that someone had brought their own chair in. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like we have chairs in this conference room. But then I realized, oh, she had had like a wider chair but she had to bring it from her desk. So every time we went to a different meeting room, she was bringing her own chair in. I was like, this is kind of ridiculous that we have not made accommodations for, someone who's going to be all over the office. We should have a chair for this person in every space that they might be in. But it led me to that nonprofit, and I reached out and I was like, hey, I had this experience. Like, are there any synergies with architecture? And so that was an amazing episode. So the guests topics are all over the place for things that I find interesting: nonprofits, people working in architecture, consultants, engineers, contractors. We talk about motherhood, we talk about LGBTQIA issues, we talk about loss, both like professional and personal leadership. I've talked with emerging grads who have just graduated and are excited to, enter the workforce, and then people who have just retired and are reflecting on their whole career. But I also think it's important. Everyone is a woman, as we mentioned. But I also want to make sure that it's not just a bunch of white ladies like myself. I want people of all different socioeconomic groups, races, gender, or not gender identities, excuse me, but like sexual identities. So I don't seek those out as a first thing. It's more of like the topic that's the first thing. But I'm also very conscious that when you scroll on the podcast feed, I want you to be able to find someone that looks like you and that has experience that you're interested in. And I think that's really important to see all different faces on there.
Well, you've told so many great stories. And like you said, there's a diversity in terms of where people are in their career, as well as racial and ethnic diversity, career path choices. But what stories do you feel still need to be told? Because you're clearly a master manifester, everything you're telling me here. So let's
Okay.
bring this into existence.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, if Maya Lin's people want to reach out to me, I would love that. I've tried, but not, I think I could try harder.
Yeah, shout
Um,
out to Maya Lynn.
yeah, Maya Lin, Suzanne Maxman, she was one of like the early AIA presidents.
Mhm.
She also had a firm in Philadelphia. I think it was SMP Architects. So she's retired in Florida now, but if she wants to reach out to me, I would gladly take that interview. um, Billy Chen. So these are some biggies, right? So I would love to interview all those folks, but mixed in, I think I still want to talk more about, I would love to do more like project deep dives where we talk about the specifics of a project, maybe like affordable housing or housing for veterans. I think there's a lot of interesting issues there. I think that, I'm always interested to hear, I think real estate, I haven't really covered that too much in terms of real estate developers. So would love to hear more from those folks. But I really like the problem is that I can't release an episode every week. I do it every other week, but I've been doing it since 2023. And I have not run out of ideas. I have not run out of people to interview. So my problem is time and editing, but I'm thankful for that problem. And I'm thankful that there's a lot of people. I'm just thinking too, a haunted house designer, if I could manifest that, that would be if I dropped architecture, I would go into haunted house design in another world. I think that would be so fun. So I would love to talk to someone who does that. But yeah, there's so much to talk about, and I do batch recording, so I'm not like constantly editing, constantly sourcing guests. But when I do reach out to guests, I have a big pool to pick from, and I'm so thankful for that problem.
Well, we are thankful that you are so willing to have these courageous conversations because I've listened to quite a few of the episodes, and you really have a talent for getting people to practice really radical honesty. They come across very authentic and really share a lot about their story. It's not this polished 6 o'clock news career highlight reel. It is the gritty story, and that's what makes your podcast so valuable.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think as much as sometimes folks might come in with like oh, these are our talking points that our firm wants to cover. We'll talk about those. We can do the advertising reel, but I really want to hear what makes people tick and their highs and their lows, and then how others can learn from it. Because if you just show the shiny parts, no one's going to relate to that. So I think it's important to show kind of the underbelly as well.
So, what's next for Architectette? Where are you imagining the podcast will go, or will you look at other formats?
Oh man. Yeah, I keep saying I might do video, but that's a lot of editing. And I think that I probably would need to bring on an editor for that. So perhaps the next phase is bringing on a teammate to kind of help with that. I think that would free up a lot of my time. I still love doing the interviews, but if there's any significant expansion, an editor would be very helpful. We did branch into live events in what was it in June. So we did like a FOMO for the AIA conference. If you didn't go to the AIA, you could join us virtually. And it was such a wonderful session. The women who are in the Architectette community, and I want to just give a shout out to all of them who have listened, who maybe are listening to this architecting for the first time because of the crossover that we've done, or folks that maybe want to listen to Architectette. But they're really kind, empathetic, generous women and men. But the ones that attended this event were just so sharing of their experiences. And I feel like it was like a really great moment to come together and to just chat and get to know each other. And so I hope to do more events like that, both virtually and live. Because I think just building community I'm a connector. I like to connect people. I like to recognize how patterns are kind of engaging. And then if people don't see it, then I can go, oh, you guys should talk to each other. And oh, I think you could learn from this person. So the more I can facilitate that, the better. And I love event planning. So it kind of, it's fun for me to do. It's not burdensome.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. So stay tuned for that. How can people connect with you and find your podcast if they want to continue this and be part of your community as well?
So, if you want to connect with me personally, LinkedIn is the best way to do that. The Architectette podcast is also on LinkedIn. So, we have a podcast page there. Also, if you want to connect with Architectette on Instagram, it's Architectette. So that's Architectette if you're confused about the spelling. The website, architectette.com. We have a newsletter that goes out monthly. So if you want to kind of listen to the podcast, though, on all platforms. But if you want to see more of the graphic things or clips from the episode, that's where LinkedIn, Instagram, you can find that stuff. So it's all over the internet. If you're looking for it, you'll probably find it because when I made the podcast, I wanted something that was a unique word that was specific. I think women in architecture, there's a lot of different groups you could find by searching that. So I made up a word, and if you search that, you will find us.
Which is a great marketing strategy, by the way. So thank you so much for being a guest. I've really enjoyed being on part one on your
Yes.
podcast and having you come on over to ours. We'll be releasing these back to back so you can binge listen. Hint, hint, everyone. But this has been so much fun, and I love what you're doing. It is such a powerful and needed resource in the community.
Thank you, Angela. I appreciate it.